You mentioned cold calling earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Cold calling versus cold email.
Yeah, love it. We
Choice.
do both.
Okay.
We do both. We do both very well. Here's what I love about outbound sales versus like say inbound or building funnels or referrals is inbound or referrals. One, it's a tough nut to crack. Two, it's not predictable typically.
Mm-hmm.
Inbound is more predictable than referrals are, but referrals are nice because they close the highest. I want a blend of all of them. But outbound sales is great because it can be predictable and sustainable and scalable. And so when I look at doing sales, I have two things in mind. One is I want to optimize for conversions. I want to get as many leads as possible. But two, I want to mitigate as much risk as possible too. So I don't like being dependent on any one platform or medium or channel for growth. And so I like to have an omni-channel approach of phone calls, emails, social, and direct mail. But right now we are currently having our highest luck with cold call and email with my internal team.
Okay.
And same goes for all our clients that we build sales teams for as well. They're email and cold call. So what's better? It really comes down to what approach are you able to take on your sales, right? Because some people have a very small TAM. TAM stands for total addressable market for those who don't know. That just means how large is the market that can actually buy from you, right? So I know that my typical, let's just take my fire yourself playbook out of the equation. That's for anybody and everybody. It's $1,500. Anybody can buy that. But if you take my actual service, which is 50,000 to 100 and something thousand, typically, my market is digital marketing agencies that are doing 1 to 20 million in top line revenue. That's my space. Okay, well, I know that my TAM is about 20 to 25,000 companies in the world that can buy from me. That's a pretty large TAM. But if my TAM is I only sell to 50 million to $500 million building material manufacturers, I know, and I can say this because I have a client that does this, I know you have 3,000 people in the world that can buy from you. That's a relatively small TAM. And so the approach you take has to be different than mine, where I'm not going to exhaust my market very quickly. So I can do a more high volume approach, which means I can make 100 dials a day. I can send 50 emails a day, and I can do that every single day and never run out. Right. And so that's what you have to know is one is how high ticket are you? Two, how small is your TAM or big? And so if you have a pretty large TAM, cold calls and emails and social and all that kind of stuff is great to combine at higher volumes. If you have also, I hate talking this much, so sorry, but there's just so much up here. I'm trying to get out to the world. But then, if you have a smaller TAM, then you got to take a more sniper-like approach to sales. And so you're not going to make 100 dials a day. You're not going to shoot 50 emails a day. You're going to try to have more high converting, super personalized, very thoughtful one-to-one sales approach than 100 dials a day, 50 emails that are relatively templatized, that are just optimizing each A/B testing to get higher conversions. So that's your approach. Back to your question, calls versus emails. I love them both. If you have access to solid data from a phone numbers perspective, it's clockwork, man. For us, we have here's what we measure. We measure dials per day. Mm-hmm. CWIPs. CWIP stands for conversation with prospects. So if my SDR calls 100 prospects a day, their CWIP, conversation with prospect, is how many times they actually converse with the actual prospect, right? So they don't get hung up on, they don't get stuck with a gatekeeper. It's not bad data. And you're looking for a 4 to 10% CWIP. So I know that for every 100 calls, my sales team right now is going to average 8 conversations with the prospect per day. And that's clockwork. And then you measure conversion. So of those 8 conversations, how many are you converting into a first-time appointment, right? And right now, I think we're averaging somewhere between 15 and 20%. I think it's 17% as of today. So we know that basically 1 out of every 5, 1 out of every 6 is going to convert into a first-time appointment, which means I'm going to get 1.5 appointments per day per SDR. I have 3 SDRs, 4 SDRs. You do the math, you can get a ton of lead volume through that. Emails are kind of similar, right? You're measuring a few things: open rates and response rates and conversion. So how many people open it and read it? How many people respond to it positively or negatively? And how many convert into a first-time appointment?
Got
And
it.
so you measure those things. You optimize your scripts on your calls. You optimize your subject lines for open rates. You optimize your calls to action for response rates and FTA conversions there. So it's not really there's not a better or a worse as much as how accessible is your client and how many leads do you need and how many leads do you want. And sometimes it means both. It's not always an or thing for me as much as it's an, can we do both? Can I have an and scenario here where we cold call and email?
Got it. Okay. And is there a minimal monthly value you'd want the customer to be at in terms of creating a cold calling team?
So it's more about your margins than it is about your top line. But I will say two factors here. One, I want to see your annual client value, whether you keep a client around for 2 months or you keep them around for 12 plus. Your annual client value, I would argue, needs to be north of 10,000, probably more like 15,000. So $1,000 a month retainer is probably where your minimum is. Now, I say if you have an extremely productized service and you have a $750 ad management fee or something like that, but your margins are 60%, well, that's different, right? You have the margins to have a sales team. But if you have really low margins and low revenue per client, you're kind of up shit creek a little bit. You probably need to change your pricing model a little bit.